when you were international, was it challenging to keep track of all the different locations that you were
Definitely.
going to? And was there any like communication tactic you used to help with that issue?
Right. So it is. It is very challenging internationally, right? Because a couple things that you have going on there, right? First is the time zone difference, right? So in the U.S., so say it's like right now, what is it? Say 3 o'clock today in the U.S. In Eastern time, 3 o'clock Eastern time p.m. But in China right now, it's 3 a.m. Right? So you always would have to sort of manage your schedules and communications with the team depending on what the time zone differences were, right? So
Yeah.
there would be many times that I would have to have calls with certain people at like 8 o'clock, 8 or 9 o'clock at night, right? Because of the time zone difference with say China or Singapore or Hong Kong, right? They were the same time zone. And so it was always a little bit challenging with the time zones, right? Because if I wanted to have, like, say, a team meeting with all the managers, right? It's very hard to do, or a team meeting with everybody on the team on like a video conference call. There would be people that you almost couldn't get it all to work in terms of the time zone, and so sometimes you'd have to have a meeting with certain time zones, and then you would have to have the same meeting again with other time zones to make sure you're communicating with the team effectively, right? So that's one issue.
So, as a manager of managers at your organization, how responsible and important did you feel about keeping everyone in your department involved and encouraged to help achieve the company goals?
So that is, I would say that is the probably the most important thing as being a manager of managers is to make sure everybody understands what the goals are, and then make sure that how we pay people in terms of like bonuses and things, because we would have like bonuses each year,
Right.
how the bonus is tied to what they did to achieve that goal, the goal, right? So you had to make sure that it was very clear what the goals were,
Yeah.
right? And you had to communicate that, right? So we would have annual bonuses that would get paid out in February, right? And so we would have, say for 2020, right, we would have the whole year to achieve what our goal is, and then the bonuses would get funded at the end of the year, and then we would determine how the bonuses get paid in February, right? And so it was very important to have quarterly meetings, with the managers as well as the whole staff, to let them know, here's what our we called it a scorecard. Here's what our scorecard is, and each quarter tell people where we're at relative to that results, so people know where we are at, and make sure that they understand where we're at relative to the goals. So when bonuses come out, say in February, they're not surprised by it, right? It should be almost they know how we did relative to the scorecard, and they should not be surprised by what the result is.
Yeah, so
So
I think that's really good that you keep all levels of management involved and have incentives and to do their job as best as they can. I think that's
right.
important in every company. It's something
Well,
I'm learning a lot.
and I do think it can be, when you have, back to the underwriting staff, we have like 1,000 people across the country. That it can, the frontline staff can kind of not connect all the dots, right? They need to make sure that they understand what they do day in and day out aligns to what your goals are, right? But then it also aligns to what the company's goals are, to make sure that they know that when the chairman of the company is talking, and I mentioned this in my email on like earnings calls, that they understand what their job does and how it fits into what the messaging the CEO is giving to Wall Street. So there isn't, so they can see the big picture, and they get why we come to work every day and what we're trying to achieve. Because I think it's, for me personally, it sort of drives me to want to come to work and be part of a team that sort of tries to deliver on the goal that they want, and that the chairman says or the CEO says, this is what you guys did, and he or she knows how what we did impacts the company.
Now, when you're international, is there still any job training for new workers, or is that all done when United States based?
No, so if we hired people, this is a little bit of a challenge, right, internationally, right? Because back to if we have offices in Dubai, Singapore, Hong Kong, different languages and different things. All the training was done locally, but I would say we had sort of a general curriculum around when, say, a manager hires somebody, we can provide information from the US around the big picture of Aetna Inc., what the company is, how does it international fit in, and then how does what they do on their job day to day. We would provide, in essence, information to the manager to help them do the training locally. And, and then we would, at times try and get people together. Generally, it wouldn't be necessarily the new people, but to bring more senior staff together in one location to have a training on, say, a new tool or a meeting to figure out, okay, how do we improve the tools that we have and what the people do on the day-to-day job, and to fix some of the inefficiencies of the job.
Is that something you guys had always done, or something that you learned over time worked out better?
Well, so I would say when I headed up the U.S. based underwriting department, we would have training classes that would take place like every 6 months, and so we would hire people directly out of college, then they would come in, and then they would be trained in Middletown, Connecticut, and they would train for like 2 or 3 months before they ultimately went onto their team.
A big question I have is, what kind of internal communication strategies did you guys use within your group? And more specifically, as you worked your way up, was there anything you didn't like, any lack of communication that you received when you were in a lower role that you made sure to stress as you got in a higher role?
Yeah,
Your way of doing things, PowerPoints,
yeah,
etc.
yeah. So the good thing about being in a lot of different jobs over the years is you were managed by many different managers, right?
Right.
And as you go through your career, you learn different things from different managers, right? You say, okay, when I get in that higher level role, here's how I would do it versus say how uh, one of my managers did it, right? You sort of, I think back to your question here, is you definitely learn a lot of things as you go through your career on what you think is good for the employees. How I would be as a different, my management style might be, you take a look at all the managers you have over time and you pick and choose different things that you thought were good and some things that you didn't think were so good you didn't do. Um, and so I thought one thing that I had with one manager that I didn't like, um, is he would only come around to visit my department at the time when there was a big problem, right? And he would come out of his office and he was on like the senior level floor of the building, right? He would come down and then he would come into the area when there was some very big problems that we had, right? And that we were dealing with. And so whenever he would come down, people would begin to get very, very nervous because they never see him, right? And the only time they would see him is when the shit's hitting the fan, right? And so I made it a point that you have to show your face in times of good, bad. You got to build relationships with frontline employees because that's really how you understand what's going on. And that's probably more of a management communication to make sure that you're showing your face, not just when things are not going well. Because people would come into my office after he left and would say to me, like a manager would come and say, okay, what's going on? Is somebody getting fired? Right. That'd be the reaction. That is not a good environment, I
No.
think, to sort of build the morale of the team. right? And to think that the manager only comes down when things are bad and people start worrying that they're going to get fired. So I don't know. I don't know if that's the kind of stuff that you're looking for a little bit. But you definitely learn as you go through your career on things you like and don't like in terms of management, communication styles, just general style, leadership style, those kind of things.
So on the other side of things, externally, what strategies did you guys use to reach your target audience or other corporations? And what do you think worked well? Maybe what didn't work well?
Yeah. So a lot of the business that we sell, the way like insurance works for like health insurance for like companies, is we don't necessarily a lot of times when we go to sell something go directly to the company, right? We don't have like a direct sales force that goes and makes phone calls to big employers, say, to get them to buy our product. A lot of times the way it works is they have an intermediary, meaning like a broker, right, that would come to us and say, hey, we have this company, say, example, like General Electric, that they're looking to place their health insurance with somebody, and would you guys be willing to bid on it? And so then we would work directly with a broker, and then as things were moving along, say with the proposal, we would then start working more closely with the customer, right, as with the broker and the customer. But the broker is the kind of the key person that we work with, right? And so the relationships with the brokers become very important, right? Because they kind of guide the big employers through who they're going to go with for their health insurance, right? And so we would have broker meetings, right, where we bring together, say, like 20 brokers to sort of talk about things, right? And to talk about like our products that we're rolling out, what our strategy is, and give them the opportunity to sort of raise their issues, right? So one of the challenges that we would have when in doing that is if you have all these brokers all together at once, right? One broker could be complaining about something, right? And this other broker has never even heard about that issue, right? And so all of a sudden, because we would do it like in a big meeting room. And so all of a sudden you would have one broker complain about something, and then this other broker never had that issue, all of a sudden begins to think he's got an issue because of this other broker's complaining about something. So I think one of the challenges that we had is we want people to give us ideas as a group, but sometimes when you bring groups together like that, it can be it can not make you look good from one broker to another broker. And so you got to be a little bit careful you don't want all your sort of your dirty laundry coming out in front of all these other brokers or customers. And so that probably didn't work well at times, right? But then at other times it worked very well because it gave us an opportunity to have all of these key brokers in one room so we can tell them what our strategy is, and then they can go back to their offices and tell their other brokers within their office what our strategy is. So it had good points and bad points of bringing brokers together, a group of them together. And then what would happen at those events though is, so we would have morning meetings, and then you'd go play golf, right, with these brokers. But that's when it was more one-on-one. So like I'd be playing golf with somebody which was a key person to us, but then I could have like intimate conversations with him around, okay, what's really happening, and you could do it more one-on-one versus part of the big group. So a lot of times what would happen is somebody wouldn't bring up a major issue in front of the whole group, but then you would go play golf with them, and then that's what you would talk about as their major issues, but it would be a much more private conversation.
Can you describe an incident where your department was having some troubles or problems and you took action upon it?
Yep. Yeah. So The one that comes to mind is when I was heading up underwriting and actuarial for international. And, and so we were, our sales in Dubai, and really, it's really Dubai is the office, but it's really the Middle East and part of Africa in terms of where we sell business. And I was having a conversation with my team as well as another conversation with the head of sales in Dubai. And he was saying, things aren't going well. We aren't working together. Both were saying as a team between like the underwriting department and the sales department, we're not selling business. And everybody's getting very frustrated with each other. And it just wasn't working, right? And at the time, I had a new manager that was in that role that was managing the department in Dubai. He had started maybe, I don't know, like 3 or 4 months ago. And so I felt, okay, I needed to get over there immediately to sort of deal with the issue, right? Because Dubai the Middle East was a very big office for us with international in terms of customers, sales, volume of activity. So how the Middle East goes is how international would go. So it was very important that we had a good office, good office, good relationships between underwriting, sales, and our brokers in that market. And so I felt it was very important that I heard this and I needed to get out there immediately. And so I said, okay, I'm coming out and let me make the reservations and I'm going to come out and we need to have a meeting with all the parties and talk about what the issues are and figure out how we work together. And we all remember that we're all one company. We all have generally the same goals in mind. And then we need to figure out what we're going to do, how we're going to work together. And then we need to probably a little bit go out and celebrate together and make this more personal to, personal relationships between my department and the sales team in Dubai. And the head of sales, after the meeting had taken place, he said, I cannot believe how fast you got out here to have this meeting, because flying to Dubai is like 13-hour flight, something ridiculous, 15-hour flight. And, you just can't jump on a plane and go. It usually takes a little bit of time. But I said I had to be out there immediately. And I think I left like maybe 2 days later after I had this discussion with the head of sales. And I think the head of sales said to me, he did say to me that he thought it was very important for him and his team, the fact that you're in the US and in a few days you were out here having a discussion around how we're going to deal with this issue versus just saying, I'm not going to worry about it. I'll just have the Middle East handle it. Like I wanted them to feel that it was somebody from the US at a senior level needed to come out and kind of deal with the issue because it was that important to me.
So it sounds like you find it pretty important to have a relationship with your employees and that you take a lot of pride in your company when you were working there.
Definitely. And another thing too, Chase, I would say too, back to employees, is just in general, like we used to have meetings about our employees, right? You would talk about, okay, who are your top employees, right? You'd want to know who the key people were. And because I always felt that those key people needed to be moved around, right? You can't just have like your best people staying in the same job, right? You need to take that person and move them to different roles, different functions, because you want them to take on much broader, bigger roles in the company, and they need to be trained throughout their career to take on that broader role, right? And so you needed to keep moving them around, right? So we'd have meetings with the managers, and I would know like the list of your top, say like 50 people in an organization of 100, and those people you need to figure out how they're going to get slated to move to different roles, because I wanted the managers to not say that, oh, this is my employee. They're not your employee. They're the company's employee. And your job as a manager is to make that employee the best for the company, not the best for your department. You need to think about the company. And so your employees are your top employees drive everything. Innovation, motivation, hitting your goals, those kind of things.
Appreciate you talking to me. I think I learned a lot.
Okay.
Thanks.
Best of luck to you, Chase.
Thanks.